Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de, with how much money you keep has very little to do with how much money you can or have earned. This is a concept that I need to drive through because if you don't understand it, no matter how much money you make, it's basically useless, okay? This is why the dictum exists that says, it's not what you make, it's what you keep that matters, okay? Hey, XenPuck here. So the idea for today's video really stems from another YouTube clip that I saw that talks about the net worth of one Hank Schrader, the DEA agent on the show Breaking Bad, right? So because I'm a personal finance nerd, I'm kind of lazy, so I was like, yeah, totally curious as to what that fictional character who has a fairly standard life would have based on research that someone else is doing, okay? Then I got pretty incensed about the methodology. Not because I think the content creator's research into how much money Hank and his wife made was not accurate or anything like that. Oh no, that part was fairly good, but with how the content creator tried to extrapolate a reasonable net worth of Hank's family unit based on his lifetime earnings, which by the way was what I thought fairly realistic $3.7 million, right? So the conclusion of that video was basically that of surprise, because from that content creator's point of view, how can Hank and family not be able to absorb a medical emergency if they should be worth at least a few mil, right? After all, they made 3.7 million, so with some reasonable investing, yada yada yada, they should at least be millionaires, right? Yeah, so here's where I get to why I'm incensed with this conclusion, right? Because today I want to address something very clearly. Having made money is not in any way a guarantee that you actually have any reasonable or even remotely comparable net worth. Not at all. And I will break down where the lifetime earnings somehow doesn't translate into this big of a nest egg, right? Number one, first of all, for the example family in question, right, that's made out of two people, one a mid to high level government special agent, and the wife, I believe, works in a mildly technical field, right? Together they make over 200K a year at the end of, their family unit's existence on the show. This will be considered very good income for most of the USA, and a combined lifetime income of 3.7 million is definitely possible. Note that this is only to mid-career, because Hank's character was only around his mid-40s when the show ended, right? Or rather, his role in the show ended. However, one giant chunk that needs to be accounted for immediately is taxes, okay? Most people say this is America, so we don't have high taxes, but honestly, I'd put that figure around 40%, right? Because when we talk about our regular tax rate not being very high, we're just talking about federal taxes. But here, we also have state taxes, local taxes possibly, FICA taxes. These are all taxes that are coming straight out of your check, right? So if you add all those together, 40% is not unreasonable. In fact, I would argue if you lived in somewhere like California or New York City, which I have lived in both of those places, it's more than 40%, okay? So right off the bat, after 0.1 of tax is concerned, lifetime earning just went from 3.7 down to about 2.22 million, okay? Point number two, okay, so 2.2 mil, still a lot of money, right? Especially for a couple that not even remotely near retirement age. So should we assume their net worth is equal to their lifetime earnings post-taxes? Absolutely not, once again, right? The next big chunk is simply the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, right? For this, we need to look at the typical family, and frankly, I think the fictional couple of Hank and Marie from Breaking Bad is a very reasonable approximation, right? The dude's kind of like a overgrown jock, and the lady's kind of a shopaholic, kind of normal suburban type of lady, right? Very bougie couple this is, right? Nothing in their portrayal indicates any particular affinity to personal finances, so I'd say that they can represent the average American. And guess what? The average American do not even save 10% of their take-home pay, right? So in this example, I'll assume something like 8%, which was what the American savings rate was oscillating before the pandemic, right? So we're immediately down to 178K. Now that's a huge drop, isn't it? From 2.22 million to 178K. Does that really surprise anyone? If you want to know what Americans spend their money on, well, that's easy. This is America. It's very, very easy to blow your money on crap that you don't need. Multiple cars, expensive landscaping, constant remodeling of the house, credit card debt, student loan burdens, personal loans, uncontrollable shopping habits, eating out way more than you absolutely need to for not even good food. The main issue is that most people, no matter how much they make, I'm talking about people who even make over 6 figures, live paycheck to paycheck. That's the vast majority of Americans, right? I mean, this is why the financial media has to say things like, please save 15%, because most people are nowhere near that, okay? 15% is the aspirational amount for normal average Americans. You've heard my opinions before, right? I think it should be at least 50%, but we're talking about only 15%, right? Sad, really, okay? Point number 3, finally, what about compound interest? After all, even with 178K, which is no small chunk, surely over time that would still grow. Why would this fictional family still be cash-strapped if they have, maybe in the hundreds of thousands? Well, here we have to talk about liquidity and why market returns doesn't actually equal returns for the average Joe, right? Half of Americans aren't even in the market, and if they are, they're not in it outside of the retirement accounts. So say half of Hank's net worth may be in retirement accounts that he can't access because he's only 45 and the show ended, right? And most Americans with a positive net worth has a house. So does Hank and family in the show. So yet, at least I would say 50 to 100K in his home equity, that's also not particularly liquid, right? And even with what little he has invested, I'm guessing, like most people, he doesn't have the education to buy the most efficient index funds, or may not actually have those choices in his 401k or whatever, or state pension. So I'd assume a reasonable split for him in terms of his total net worth would be something like this: 100K in home equity, maybe 150K in retirement accounts due to just below average performance due to ignorance, and maybe 50K in cash or cash equivalents, right? So his 170K in savings over his lifetime grew to about 300K. That's really not bad, but the actual amount on hand for emergencies is only 50K. And that's a lot for normal life living, but definitely not enough to withstand any long-lasting medical conditions or procedures in the United States. So what is my point here, right? It's simple. You could make multiple millions and still end up with only 1/10 of it with a moderate level of investing, right? Lifetime earnings are total earnings, so taxes first immediately takes a huge chunk out of it. That can't be helped unless you want to go start your own country somewhere. And after that, lifestyle inflation makes it so that most people spend and save at the rate of their peers, right? And that's why they have no idea where their money went. Not to mention, people in the West like to spend money they don't even have on things like car loans and credit cards, which generates a tremendous amount of interest that sucks up your future earnings, right? So it's very reasonable to save below 10%. And finally, even the pathetically low amount of savings is almost certainly not being invested in the most efficient manner. Now, for those of you who've seen Breaking Bad, do you remember the character Hank, right? He's a bit of a blowhard. He's a reasonable detective, but still, he busts balls and cracks heads, right? Seems to be what he's into. Does he seem at all like a math nerd to you? No? Then yeah, I guarantee you that guy is not exalting the virtues of compound interest and early financial investments to his friend, right? So if you live an average life, even if your lifetime earnings look really nice on paper, you end up not even be able to survive a single real medical emergency. That's the reality. Understanding this dilemma, I think, is crucial because I hope you think this is a terrible way to live, right? Now, it's one thing to have never made any money and be in financial trouble, but wouldn't it feel that much worse knowing that you made a few mil already and still unable to pay even for one medical emergency? So what's the solution? Well, you know what I'm going to say. Get to financial independence, right? For that, you have to sacrifice and compromise and prioritize on what's actually important instead of getting a new Mustang or Tesla just because your buddies or neighbors or coworkers got one, right? Right, rant over now. Let me know what your net worth is compared to your lifetime earnings, or if you want to guess mine. I'll give you a hint. Before I retired early, I already made more than most people do in a lifetime, right? Certainly more than Hank and family. Cheers. I'll approach it.